So the next important chapter that we need to see is actually with respect to agriculture. When I talk about agriculture, what we should be aware is actually with respect to the climatic conditions under which you can grow a particular crop. Whenever you are aware of this climatic conditions, then it is very easy for you to locate certain crops in certain areas, and also it will be easy for us to remember in which areas these are significantly present. So here we will be seeing which are these areas in the world and India where a particular crop is usually present. The first thing that you need to focus is in page 41, where you see different definitions. You have agriculture, which is an art of cultivation on soil raising crops. Sericulture is associated with silkworms. Pisciculture is breeding of fish. Viticulture, grapes. Horticulture, I am talking about vegetables, flowers and fruits for commercial use. All these are very important for us when we are talking about agriculture or different definitions. From prelims point of view, this fact is important. The next important thing is an interesting fact with respect to organic farming, where organic manure and natural pesticides are used instead of chemicals. Even genetic modification to increase the yield of the crop is not used. So GM crops does not come under organic. Chemicals also cannot be used in organic farming. So these two are very important for us. Then farming can be actually separated into subsistence farming and commercial farming. What is the difference? Subsistence means using primitive technology and limited resources to produce the goods. Whenever I am talking about commercial farming, I may think about plantations or vast areas being actually used to go for agriculture. There, the output yield may be more and also profits will be more. The main motto of commercial farming is actually to sell to others, whereas subsistence farming, the main motto will be to use it for their use and also to sell it to others. Usually only when they get more they will be interested in selling, else they will be interested only in this. So let us see what exactly do we mean by subsistence farming. Traditionally, low levels of technology, this is very important, not much technology is used. Household labor, usually people belonging to a single family will do the labor, and they have small output. This subsistence can be further divided into intensive subsistence agriculture, where the farmer cultivates a small plot of land using simple tools and more labor. I told you, when you don't use tractors and all, then you have to use more number of people or oxes and more working hours to plow the same land. Climate with large number of days with a sunshine and fertile soil permits. So here they usually try to grow one crop annually on the same plot. Rice is the main crop in most of the intensive agricultural region. We call it intensive subsistence farming. The reason is intensive, more labor is present, subsistent, less technology. Other crops, wheat, maize, pulses, and these are usually present in monsoon regions which are actually dependent on rain and not on irrigational activities. And then we also come across something called as primitive subsistence farming. Here I already told about shifting cultivation or slash and burn cultivation in 7th standard NCERT book, where I was talking about cutting the trees, burning them and then growing there. Once the fertility is lost, you again move to the new area. This is called as shifting cultivation, and the different names given are, it is called as jum or jumming, jum cultivation in northeast India. In Mexico it is called as milpa, in Brazil it is called as roca, and Malaysia it is called as ladang. Usually in prelims they may ask you this, right? and you should be aware of this. Maize, yam, potatoes and cassava are usually grown in this region. Then what is more important for us is actually with respect to nomadic herding. What is the meaning of this? Here, usually when we talk about dairy farming, I said in grasslands, usually dairy farming is more. There what happens? Grasses are commercially grown and there the animals are sent to feed and then they bring the animals back and the product is being used. That is commercial dairy farming. But here, they have some animals and they allow it to go for natural grasslands wherever they are present. They don't have a land where they grow the grasses. So they go in search of these grasses and wherever they find they have it. These nomadic means, see, in summer in few regions you see more amount of grasses. So they go to those regions in summer. In winter they come back to different places. So these people who shift from one place to another place in search of grasses for their sheep or cattle is actually called as nomadic herding, right? It is mostly famous in Rajasthan and Jammu and Kashmir, especially when we talk about Ladakh and other region. These nomadic herding people are very, very popular. Sheep, camel, yak and goats are the most commonly reared one. Then the next important thing that we need to focus is actually with respect to commercial farming. Here usually the size of the farm will be more and high technology will be actually used. Crops are grown and animals are reared for sale in the market. The main purpose is commercial. They are not doing it to feed themselves, to take care of their families, but most important for them is to make profit, right? Commercial farming includes commercial grain farming, mixed farming and plantation agriculture. In commercial grain farming, crops are grown for commercial purposes. I told you again, wheat and maize are common commercially grown grains in the world. I told you prairies is also called as granaries of the world for wheat. There it is usually grown in North America. What is the name of this? We call it prairies. In Europe or Asia, we call it steppes. These areas are sparsely populated, but they have large farms spreading over hundreds of hectares. Here, usually aircrafts and all are used to supply fertilizers or to drop fertilizers, pesticides and all. They use aircrafts and all. But in India, usually it is human beings and by hand they usually do it. Next important thing is about mixed farming, where you're growing food and fodder crops and also you're rearing livestock. Both these are happening in the same place. When I talk about plantations, I'm actually talking about tea, coffee, sugarcane, cashew, rubber, banana and cotton. These are plantation crops which are used for commercial farming and usually only a single crop will be grown in a major area. But for this, climate plays a very important role. Climate has to be very, very good. So you usually find rubber in Malaysia, coffee in Brazil, tea in India and Sri Lanka. Coffee is present in India as well, rubber is present in some parts of India, but commercially you see in these regions. So after this, as I have already told you, it is very, very important for us to look at some of the major crops and the climatic pattern which is required for the growth of these crops. The very first important thing that we need to focus is about rice. When I say rice, rice is a major food crop of the world. And remember, rice is usually grown in tropical and subtropical regions, that is from 0 degree to 35 degree north or 35 degrees south, you usually see rice being grown. India is the largest producer. Along with India, even China produces rice. Japan, Sri Lanka and Egypt, which also fall in this region, is there. West Bengal and Bangladesh usually get 2 to 3 crops, mainly because they get very good rainfall for this. Usually for paddy cultivation or rice cultivation, in this picture you can observe, water has to be present. Usually it is water consuming plant. In dry regions, whenever they grow for rice cultivation, the problem with the rice cultivation is they do not get enough water and the crop will fail. But usually in India, as we have subsistence farming, where mostly the rice is grown so that they can use it for their family purposes, usually they go for rice cultivation. But unfortunately, as it is not a good product, if water is not available, they see losses. Then the second important thing is wheat. This wheat has a peculiar feature where it requires moderate temperature, that means less temperature, and moderate rainfall. The meaning of this is more or less you have good rainfall during the growing season. In India, Uttar Pradesh, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Punjab, Haryana, these are the regions which are actually good for growing wheat. And they are good to grow wheat in winter. The reason for this is, in winter, temperature is usually less, moderate temperature, and they get rainfall from the westerlies or some winds, you don't know the term yet, some winds which blow from Mediterranean Sea carry the moisture content and give rainfall in winter season in India, especially in Punjab, Haryana and Rajasthan. So this region usually is good for growing wheat. When we take United States, Canada, Argentina, Pampas, Russia, Ukraine, steppes, Australia, downs and India, usually we see this. Most of the countries which is mentioned, US, Canada and all, they are present in temperate region. That is where temperature is usually low. In India, as it requires moderate temperature, it is usually grown in winter, right? So it's a winter crop, or we also call it as Rabi crop, right? So this is very, very important for us. Next, we need to talk about millets or coarse grains, which are usually grown on less fertile and sandy soil. They require less rainfall, so it is usually arid crops. In India, jowar, bajra and ragi. Ragi grown in Karnataka, bajra and jowar in Maharashtra and Rajasthan respectively, right? Then you have maize, which is very, very important crop in major countries. In India, it is usually grown as a subsistence crop. So it requires moderate temperature, moderate rainfall, but lot of sunshine. So regions where high temperature is seen, usually it is grown. Maize is grown in North America, Brazil, China, Russia, Canada, India and Mexico. But mostly in the America and European countries you see this. And the next important factor is actually with respect to cotton. See guys, I am explaining what is given in this book itself. As we go to further classes, we will be taking more information and adding it. If there is any information left, then I will take separate slides classes where I will add extra information that is required for your exams. So with the help of NCERTs, whatever is required, we will be going through that. So cotton requires high temperature, light rainfall and 210 frost-free days. That is, moisture content should not be there in the atmosphere wherever cotton is growing, because the cotton becomes wet and the fiber in the cotton will not be proper for clothes and all. So if you need to have best quality cotton, then the first important thing is it needs high temperature. So can I say it is a tropical crop? That is, it will be present in between 23.5 degree north to 23.5 degree south. And usually if you have a mountain and if wind is moving in this direction, cotton will be grown in this region. The reason is, I have told you, whenever you have mountains and wind is moving in one direction, rainfall will be there, orographic rainfall. And on the other side, we call it as leeward and rainfall will be less. In India, Maharashtra, Gujarat, especially on the eastern side of Western Ghats. You have Western Ghats, and on the western side of Western Ghats you have Arabian Sea, but on the eastern side of Western Ghats, You have Maharashtra and Gujarat, and it also requires black and alluvial soil. Usually black soil is very, very good. China, USA, India, Pakistan, Brazil and Egypt are the leading producers. I want you to remember this, and most of these countries, they actually fall under 23.5 to 23.5. Only in those regions you usually see cotton being grown. Then you have jute. It is also called as golden fiber. It grows in alluvial soil where you require good fertility, and it requires high temperature, heavy rainfall and humid climate. Usually in Rajasthan, Gujarat you don't find, but you find it in West Bengal, Bangladesh, where you have high temperature, heavy rainfall and humid climate. Cotton, high temperature, less rainfall, and you should have dry climate. Jute, opposite. This crop is grown in the tropical regions, especially India and Bangladesh. Then we need to talk about coffee. Coffee requires warm, means good temperature, where we are talking about tropical region. Wet climate, rainfall should be heavy. Western Ghats, northeast is the area. Well drained loamy soil, that is, you should have good mixture of sand and silt being present. Hill slopes are more suitable for the growth of this crop. Brazil is the leading producer, followed by Colombia and India. Tea is another important beverage crop which requires cool climate. Coffee, warm climate. Tea, cool climate. If coffee is grown on the lower parts of the mountains, tea will be grown in the upper parts of the mountains. And tea requires well distributed high rainfall throughout the year. So, tea cannot be grown in those regions where you see heavy rainfall in some time and dry region on the other. Coffee requires well drained, even with irrigation and good rainfall it's enough. But tea requires rainfall throughout the period. The main reason is the leaves and other things usually have to grow properly. Else the leaves become dry and it is not good for production of tea. Labor is very much used in tea plantations. Usually Bangladeshi migrants, and in Sri Lanka, Tamils and all are usually associated with this particular tea productions. Kenya, India, China, Sri Lanka produce the best quality tea, and China is famous for tea productions. And apart from this, what you have is about agricultural development. From Main's point of view, just see once, nothing much. They talk about mechanization of agriculture, that is, you need to use very good equipments in going for agricultural production. And at the same time, they talk about two important things. One, a farm in India which is very small, subsistence, dependent on household, and primitive agriculture. Whereas when we talk about United States, you can see huge land, and here aircrafts and other being used to spray the pesticides. No need to compare, but if you can understand this concept, it is more than enough. In your essays, when you are talking about India's agricultural scenarios, you can use this specific examples, right? So with this, we are going to end this particular chapter about agriculture. Next, let's quickly move to industries. Especially we have to see in which region which industries will grow and what are the raw materials, market and other things that are actually required for these industries to survive. Right? So let's quickly move to the next chapter, that is industries.